Hey, it's Derek here. It's Talking with Famous People. I want to talk now about waiting, as I did in previous videos about feeling this way as an individual. I want to talk about humanity feeling this way, or feeling like civilization is subject to the same rule. So the original video talked about how I often feel as though I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm waiting for myself to get everything all in place, then finally I'll be able to live the proper life I'm supposed to be living, kind of a thing. And how that's an illusion and various other things. But I also have the same feeling for humanity itself. I think that I do embrace the notion that we're of historical linearity, which is a word. I don't think that's a term for anything in particular, but it's just a description of the thing that says we're moving towards something. We're moving from something, through something, and towards something. That when we get past a given period, we can look at it as a phase of development, a phase of cognitive development as a species. A lot of time of human history that was reserved, the development of the species was mostly maintained and reserved through a thin sliver of an intelligentsia that had to write all the books and stuff and control the means of communication. And a lot of people never learned anything and didn't contribute to the progression, but it didn't matter because it was set down into a space object, namely a book, which allowed it to persist in ways that it otherwise wouldn't have. So, the progression of human development then occurs on multiple planes of intellectual development. For example, the obvious ones like crop efficiency unleashed all sorts of other things for humans because now all of a sudden we had tons of food available. Now all of a sudden we had to stay in one place. Now all of a sudden we needed protection from barbarians. All that kind of stuff. Obviously, another pivotal moment is going to be the printing press because it makes books. It takes books out of the realm of craft works and into the realm of products, and that obviously disseminates information a lot more effectively than they could prior. So these big moments unleash the next level of stuff. And many pundits or thinkers or people have noted that the speed of development is increasing. We have things like Moore's Law that tell us about specific technologies and how they're going to advance, but the notion that in general our external tools of cognition facilitation, computers, things like this, and they're not just cognition facilitation, they're communication facilitation, and they're entertainment, so there are lots of things, but that these tools become more and more effective. Of course, as we start to understand the universe better because we have these tools, we also understand the universe better through the framework or through the lens of these tools. So we start to think of consciousness in terms of computer terms. We start to understand development of ideas as a species in terms of apps rather than a single system. And I think that's a critical moment in history for the species, is the widespread acceptance that our truths are best attended to via sets of apps rather than trying to have a single program that in-houses everything. What that functionally means is developing a way of compressing whole bunches of ideas into a single set and utilizing that set as an object rather than as the entirety of its contents. It allows you to meta up in that regard. So the whole point of moving towards something, of course, is that we arrive there at some time. A lot of people have posited a singularity occurring in relation to artificial intelligence. And I think that that's certainly possible, but I don't know if that's exactly where we're going. It would seem to me that the first place we need to go to is to have there become a general groundswell for a named and described bridge framework that allows rationalists and non-rationalists to understand each other, or at least this, that allows rationalists to access non-rationalist or irrational behaviors and to understand why those contradictions, the contradictions implicit in them, don't invalidate them as behaviors. I think if we can settle upon terms and we have algorithms that are effective in making that bridge for rationalists, then we start to be talking about making the next major move, right? So if all sorts of media outlets started talking about meta-rationalism, for example, I don't think it's going to be how it goes down, but if it were, then what that would mean is it would sort of enter the public consciousness. And it would be a standard that people found interesting and tried applying these days. And so, in that instance, people would get it and would internalize it. Not only get it, but they'd internalize it as the minimum now. Like, okay, well, true people are meta-rational, and people who are really saying things that aren't trying to just being argumentative and shit, they're meta-rational because they're aware of all the how fraught with difficulty any specific course of action is, but they haven't forsaken meaning in action, and nor have they refused to look elsewhere besides logic and reason for some solution to the issue. So I think that that's the next moment then, is bridging those two things. Because in the status quo, we have arguments like I have here, I'm talking with Finnish people a lot, arguments between people who are rationalists and people who are in some way engaging in some sort of irrational argumentation. Rationalist versus irrational is a common cause of conflict. But if the irrationality is understood properly and is framed properly and is described as a behavior, is talked about as a behavior, then it doesn't need to be a conflict there. They don't need to be considered mutually exclusive. So that's, I guess, my notion on moving towards a singular, final human truth. That it begins with finding a shared meta framework that even if we can agree on none of the specifics, we can agree on that one framing mechanism, we can build from there. And that's going to take a groundswell of people independently finding it interesting and convincing enough to talk about it, write about it, research it, whatever. Will it happen? I don't know. Maybe not with this. It'll happen with something. It's going to be some sort of frameworky thing that's going to emerge as a popular term to describe non-attached, reason-driven, and truth-pursuing mechanisms. And that's it. So thank you for watching. That was about 10 minutes long.